All right, there we go. Hi, everyone. This is Jackie Cooper with the Digital Asset Regulatory Authority, and this is our second annual summit. We'd like to welcome everyone who is on the live stream today, as well as those that might be watching this recording after the fact. For those that do not know who I am, my background is that I'm an attorney partner with Cogent Law Group, and I'm also the CEO and founder of the Blockchain Legal Institute, as well as the Maryland Blockchain Association. And I have my co-founder with me today, Matt Rogers. I'll let you share more about yourself.
All right. Well, first off, congratulations on a great year for crypto assets, it looks like, and another DARA summit, which we're happy about because we have great colleagues and speakers that are going to come on and join us. So like Jackie said, I'm a co-founder of a number of the projects that we do. I also enjoy building applications and of course investing in decentralized initiatives, which is certainly a little bit about what DARA is about. So without much more introduction, let's go ahead and roll through some slides and then let's get the panelists up here. So we're going to start with a little bit about what DARA is and what we're up to, and then we'll get everyone going.
For sure. So the Digital Asset Regulatory Authority actually got started last year, and there's been a lot of change over the last year, as everyone has known, both over here in the United States as well as overseas. And one of the things that we realized back last year in June was that there needed to be more SROs, self-regulatory authorities, and more responsibility within our own community. So DARA was established, and this year what we are going to be doing, especially on October 29th, is we're going to actually be assembling a global assembly of SROs from around the world. We are extending invitations to different SROs that exist, and we will have representatives from those SROs on a virtual summit to talk about what they've been doing, why they felt it was important to get started, and where the trends are and what we need to be thinking about within our own community. So we're very excited about having this virtual event on October 29th, which is also right around the time period that one of our other organizations that has supported us over time, the Government Blockchain Association, will be having its major event actually at the Capitol. So that's very exciting. We have, at that General Assembly, we're going to be doing a variety of things. Matt, why don't you go ahead and explain more about what we're going to be kicking off there?
Sure. So this is going to be in Washington, D.C., which is a good central venue for this sort of affair. And we've got basically a general assembly of those people that are interested in this sort of initiative in a self-regulated organization. So that may involve some of a DAO, that may involve sort of ratifying or agreeing to certain terms of the SRO, and compliance roundtables and otherwise discussions of industry professionals. And that's enough about that one for now. More information on that later. Let's keep rolling.
Sure. So over the last year, we've done a lot. And one of the things that the DARA has accomplished is we've actually kicked off a monthly Attorney General working group, and where we meet with it varies each month, but we meet with up to 21 different attorney general groups and answer questions and also provide different resources for them. And we are meeting with them regularly and supporting compliance officers as well. The other accomplishment that we actually are doing is we are hosting annual summits and other virtual events as we find that there's a need within our community. And we have many partners who have expertise within this area. So we are excited to be having other virtual events coming up in 2026. We also, on our LinkedIn page and another social, we are sharing state and federal agency updates on what's going on within the digital asset community, because as everyone knows, whether you are in Europe, in Asia, in North America, South America, or wherever, this is an evolving space, and it's very difficult sometimes to keep up. So what we are trying to do is to be watching what the trends are and to share out. And then we are supported by the Blockchain Legal Institute Foundation. They are advancing our SRO initiative, and we're grateful for that. It's a 501c3. So individuals that would like to get involved can definitely reach out both to the Blockchain Legal Institute Foundation and or the DARA Foundation. And these are just some of the individuals and entities that are part of our growing community over the last few years. So Matt, I'm going to have it go over to you.
Look at all that. Look at all those people in the community. That's great. Speaking of, we've got a group of community members assembled today, and I think without any more delay, let's go ahead and get to some of the subjects which are really important today. The subject of regulation, and compliance being super important as a way forward for us economically, and developing economic models and hopefully growing economics and fluidity in the community and worldwide. So to that end, we have a group of people here representing to speak on these issues. And I think, Jackie, is now the time that we're going to go ahead and switch the format. So we're going to bring the moderators first.
Yeah, we're going to bring our moderators in. We have Richard Jackson. We have Allison Maffitt. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We have been working with them over the last year or so, and they are experts in their field. So RJ and Allison, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Sure. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Matt. And again, happy anniversary to DARA. Been a quick year, surprising year. So I am Richard Jackson. I go by RJ. I'm the Deputy Attorney General for Cybersecurity, Technology, and Digital Assets in my day job. As part of DARA, I am the Director of U.S. Intergovernmental Affairs. So basically translating the work that's happening at the federal level down to the state level with a particular emphasis in the Attorney General's working group that Jackie mentioned.
I think you're muted, Allison. Well, Allison Maffitt is a... You got it.
It switched to my phone. Sorry. But I'm an attorney with Cogent Law Group, and I've been in the digital asset space for coming up on 6 years, which watching the evolution of the space has been pretty interesting, and just excited to be here and listen to what everybody has to say. So thank you.
So today we have a stellar group of individuals who are going to be hopping on right now. And our first panel is going to be speaking about the collaboration across borders for harmonized digital asset regulation and operational resilience. Now, this is a very technical term, operational resilience, but if you're in the space, you know that you need to be able to operate and change and also be secure. So I'm going to let our moderators pose the questions to everyone. So that way you can gain, for those that are listening, you will gain insight on a variety of skill sets and knowledge. So go for it.
Since I figured out my microphone, I'll get started with panel one. But if you wouldn't mind, everybody, if you could give a quick introduction. I think we are all seeing the same screen, so if we just go left to right. So Alexandra, could you please start?
Hi, I'm Alexandra Lloyd. I'm the head of anti-money laundering at YouHolder, where I don't just oversee anti-money laundering, but I ensure that we are compliant with regulations across our crypto operations. And I'm increasingly focused on policy and new regulatory strategy as new legislation is coming into effect globally. YouHolder is based out of Switzerland and Italy, with registrations in Spain and Argentina. And so I have a lot on my plate. My general role is ensuring our business is operating safely, responsibly, and navigating these new regulations that are coming in for financial intermediaries and digital asset service providers.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Tatem. I'm the owner and operator of Tatem Web Design and also Tatem Cybersecurity. I've been the IT guy for about 25 years now, and I have been running Tatem Web for the past 25 years as well. I started out as a network engineer, went to college back in 2000 for network engineering, and moved off into web after that. I've got a very extensive background in cybersecurity. I work heavily for companies that are trying to become CMMC compliant in the DoD space. I help them with implementing and getting them to compliance levels 1, 2, and 3. The government just recently released new rules that are finally getting in place for companies that are going to be required to have CMMC in place. So basically, most of my job now is focusing in on cybersecurity work.
Great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Louis Sirico. I am the Chief Technology Officer for FluiDefi. FluiDefi is a compliant platform and data provider. We've been in the blockchain space for about 5 years now. Our clients include banks, private equity funds, and law enforcement agencies, where we help them to build solutions to do everything from tracking digital assets to seizing digital assets.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My name is Robert Whitaker. I'm the Director of Law Enforcement Affairs for Merkle Science. Merkle Science is a blockchain analytics company providing blockchain analytics to law enforcement, financial institutions, and regulators, that kind of thing. So been in the business now for about 12 years when Bitcoin was the only thing going. But we've seen a lot of changes since then. So been around this for a while. So glad to be here tonight and look forward to the conversation.
Hi, I'm Wes Crook, CEO of FP Block, also known as FP Complete. FP Complete's been in the business now for about 13 years and the blockchain space now since 2016. We are an application developer and blockchain developer, primarily working with regulated and near regulated industries, focusing most recently in the DeFi space and the Web3 world. I've been in this game now, unfortunately, for about 40 years. And been through every hype cycle we've seen so far. So thank you for the invitation and appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight.
Good day. My name is Anthony Howell. I serve as the overseas representative for the government of Bermuda. I'm the director of the Washington, D.C. office. I also sit on various different boards, including the Maryland Blockchain Association and DARA as well. I've worked with Jackie and Matt here for quite some time, and very thrilled to always be here to share the insights and input that Bermuda has within the industry. It has served as a leader in the industry since 2018, and I support our team back home to ensure that the regulatory framework that we've developed is a model to be followed by any jurisdictions that wish to be in the industry itself and wish to have a gold standard. So I'm very happy to be here and meet everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all. I guess we'll just jump right into it. So, Alexandra, may I start with you with aligning regulatory standards in Europe and the US, and this can be expanded globally, but we'll start here. What are the areas you believe businesses need to be aware of as it relates to the US and EU approaches to digital assets oversight, with the focus on the DORA implementation and its impact beyond the EU?
Yeah, well, I think DORA has been a nasty shock to a lot of players in Europe already, as we started looking at the text itself when the technical guidelines finally came out and realizing what a beast it was. I think I called it the Hydra in the last time I spoke about it, and also scared quite a few people in the room. But the fun thing is, much like GDPR, this also applies to everyone in the US who is a critical service provider for a European entity, and then down the chain. So if you are providing critical infrastructure or services for a critical service provider, DORA applies to you. So basically, if you want to have any sort of global expansion strategy that does not even necessarily include the EU, but might include people who are also in the EU, or if you have a member of your group that's operating in the EU and there's some development going on in between the group, you need to be DORA compliant. And frankly, this legislation has been drafted not just for CASPs, but financial intermediaries and banks, and it is at the level of a European bank. It's heavy. There are very few cybersecurity engineers who will know how to draft for a European regulator. It's about as burdensome as doing, I don't know, 2 or 3 ISO standards at once. And it does not matter how big you are. You have to comply. So that was a fun bomb to drop on everyone. But yes, DORA, I mean, fundamentally what it is the Digital Operations Resilience Act. So it's no one's questioning the need for stronger standards and for even just common standards so that we have a reference point. It's just that in the way that this piece of legislation has come out, it has become very heavy. And there are some rumors as to why that's happened, but obviously in the end, that's what we've got delivered. So it's very key for your legal teams to go and examine your contracts and examine if anyone you have is touching on that. And basically, you are under a mandate to show to them that you are DORA compliant, not the other way around. So you can make this a huge competitive advantage if you are in the US and you are the first mover, because a lot of people are just going to have to drop providers who aren't willing to do it. So it is a business opportunity if you're the quickest to turn around and get this done, because it will basically be the pure defining factor on whether some people can actually even opt for your services. But yeah, the practical impacts are huge, and it's totally extraterritorial. So we've got harmonizations already here.
Yeah, have any of you all begun to understand how DORA impacts your work, and how so if you have started that process?
From our perspective, we're just leaving Europe out, and the companies we're building. It's we've done business.
But that's a huge impact.
Yeah, I mean we've had 3 projects shift off to the UAE from Europe in the last month just because of DORA and everything else. So we're finding that the European regulatory environment is becoming unbusiness friendly for developers and engineers, and we're just if we're ignoring it, we're just moving to other geographies. UAE, Singapore, US, South America. And really at the end of the day, I think the European Union is going to be more hurt for this regulatory play than the rest of the world.
Louis, you seem to have a thought.
Yeah. So we've been working on it for more than 2 years now. I mean, it's not a surprise. It's been in draft. It's been coming just like MiCA. People suddenly woke up in January. MiCA was ratified a while ago. But anyway, yeah, as a CTO, it doesn't scare me. I mean, the cloud providers love it because, you need resiliency, right? But if you think about it, I mean, if your customer's a bank, we have bank customers. If you log into your bank and your bank is not available and you can't get your money, how does that make you feel, right? So all we are doing is we are ensuring that digital assets and banks and other financial institutions that support digital assets have a platform that is available to customers when customers want access to their digital assets, just like their money, right? So from that perspective, we're embracing it. The challenge, and I absolutely agree with Alexandra, is there are many companies absolutely putting on their websites, we are MiCA compliant, we're DORA compliant, but in their legal documents, they absolutely do not claim the same things. In fact, they will claim the opposite. So it's really, really going to be critical for anyone who is looking at companies doing evaluations to look at the legal agreements and make sure that they're not just buying, marketing hype that's on someone's webpage, because that is going on right now, big time.
Well, that actually leads to the next question, and I'll just throw it back at you, Louis. Do you see some key updates or trends from U.S. agencies or U.S. regulatory bodies or Canadian regulatory bodies on supervision, compliance, and enforcement in the digital asset space?
So the FluiDefi platform, we monitor over 200 different news sources around the world for crypto-related news, digital asset-related news. And so when you all sent me this question, I decided to do some research. There's been, just in regulations alone, over 100 articles per day during the last 30 days. And so using our AI to summarize some of this, because we could spend the next half hour just talking about what's happening. To summarize it, predominantly you have over 1,200 articles on regulations regarding exchange traded funds, or ETFs. You have, of course, now in the US, a lot of interest on 401k, 401k funds being allowed to have digital assets in them as well. So that's a big topic. The retail expansion of digital assets to the groups. But specifically with regard to regulations, and you've got the Genius Act that was passed not long ago in the United States, which is around stable tokens. But really what big companies are looking for is some type of clarity regarding how all the different government agencies and ruling bodies are, how their regulations are going to work together. Because if you're issuing a token, technically you need to be, if it's a stable token, you need to be compliant in the US with Genius. You would need to be compliant with anyone in the EU with MiCA. You'd need to be compliant with VARA in the UAE, right? And this just goes on and on when you talk about Singapore and Hong Kong and Bermuda, of course. You know, there's all these things. So given the speed at which this is happening, compliance officers and lawyers, this is a really fast-moving, fast-changing industry, and it's going to take a lot to keep up with it for sure.
I definitely agree with that part, that it's fast moving and hard to keep up with. Would anybody else like to add to what they're seeing or hearing about potential regulatory changes? All right.
Actually, I'll just make a quick comment. Is just from the observation from the outside party looking in. You know, I think one of the nuances with the United States is the fact that they do have so many agencies that have buy-in or want a seat at that table, and definitely see how this does correlate into the concept of who is going to be the director of or craft the direction of it in terms of being compliant. And so compared to some of the other jurisdictions like Bermuda, for example, being that we do have one regulator, it allows us to very much streamline certain measures. And so comparing it to other jurisdictions, just kind of, we see that struggle. And I must say personally, it's I'm kind of relieved we just have one regulator, because it is an uphill battle. We have seen though some states looking to do their own actions in terms of crafting out and carving out regulatory frame of how they want to operate. So it's going to be interesting to see not only the federal level, but also the state level in terms of being compliant. So again, it's going to be very interesting to see.
Most definitely. Robert, I'm going to pick your brain for this next one. From the law enforcement perspective, what should businesses be aware of in navigating new compliance requirements and facilitating cross-border investigations in light of strengthening digital operation standards?
So we have in this market space, this industry, we've looked at the lack of regulation since I got into it way back in like 2013 and 14. So, and then back then it was just FinCEN putting out a little bit of guidance about what's money and what's virtual assets and whether they're similar or not. But as we've progressed, we've seen different levels of enforcement. We've seen different levels of regulation, and now we're getting exactly what the industry has been asking for, some clarity, if you don't mind me using that term, along with the Clarity Act and the Genius Act. So we see the regulation coming in, and we've also hit a very important crossroads, and that is that when regulation comes in, you get to a point to where regulators are enforcing the regulation that they passed that you've asked for. So recently we've had regulation by enforcement. I think we're out of that stage as much, but I think we're also in a stage where we're going to see very structured and very systematic reviews of your compliance programs. And if you're found not to be in compliance for whatever reason, I don't think there's any leeway there anymore. I think that we've gotten what we asked for, so the leeway is no longer going to be there, and it won't be there. But we've also hit a point to where regulation can become our enemy, in the sense that governments can now pick winners and losers based on regulation. You can draft policy to a point to where it's too difficult for anyone to get in and too difficult for anyone to stay in. And I think we're seeing a little bits of that. I think we've fragmented the stablecoin market with the different acts, MiCA and the Genius Act. So we have coins that will be good in the U.S., coins that are good in the EU, and coins that are good in the UK, but they're not good anywhere else. So I think we have a real danger of fragmenting our markets. But from a law enforcement perspective, you can expect that there will be much heavier regulation coming up. It seems a little lax right now because we've had this change of administration and kind of change of policy. But I think that's just a phase we're going through until we push out the enforcement, regulation by enforcement, and start coming into proper regulatory frameworks. And then of course, law enforcement itself has its own problems here, and that is that the old adage that, hey, it's crypto, it's not our problem, is suddenly not there anymore. If there's regulations surrounding it, then law enforcement agencies, not only, as Anthony said, if you just have 1 or 10 regulators, each one of them has to have their own ability to do this kind of work, to be the regulator, to do enforcement, and also to advise other parties when it comes down to what they should be doing in their compliance program. So law enforcement's just getting started. Regulation is just getting started, and we have a long way to go. So next year we'll ask that question again, and we'll see. But things have certainly changed in a year, I'll tell you that.
I'll chime in really quickly. Just the knowledge base from entities, the state, federal, that's gone up so much in the last 2 or 3 years. Are you all seeing that change too? So within just communication that you get from the entities, plus how they understand the issues.
Well, certainly with the mainstreaming. Yeah, certainly with the mainstreaming, we see a lot more interest, and that brings a lot more knowledge. So, and we have the ability to transfer knowledge so fast these days that I don't expect to be a learning curve too long.
Right. Go ahead, Lewis.
I'll just add something very quickly. One of our clients, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, they're kind of the FBI of Canada. You can check the news, but just last week they seized the largest amount of crypto in Canadian history, 56 million. They seized that from a platform that basically was not doing AML KYC, counterparty AML KYC. So, that really sends a very, very strong message that I think everyone in the world really needs to be aware of is you really need to do AML KYC. And I know, Alexandra, you're nodding your head here, but it's so true. And I think Canada is at least demonstrating the consequences of not doing that.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Kudos to RCMP for doing a great job. I've known those guys a long time.
Matt, may I ask you the next question? The managing systematic risk and cyber threats. What strategies should businesses be aware of to be more resilient against cybersecurity attacks, cyber attacks, and operational disruptions?
Sure.
Tying in some of DORA's requirements, if this makes sense.
Sure. And with companies, it's very similar to compliance from like the CMMC standpoint that we do here in the United States. Strong ICT risk management, rapid incident response. Can you guys hold on just 1 second here?
I can switch it up. Wesley. This ties in, and I think this works well. So balancing the innovation with security. What approaches do you suggest for supporting blockchain and crypto innovation while protecting the customers and maintaining financial stability? Matt, we just switched up the question, so you'll be next.
Yeah, that's a good question, because a lot of people are mixing up, regulation with security. Security is building things that cannot be, penetrated from a builder's perspective, from an engineering perspective. So from our perspective, security is its own thing. Regulatory, the regulatory environment is a whole different animal. And people are getting that kind of mixed up. Oh, security is regulatory. No, it's not. It's government's way of enforcing its will on the population, so to speak. And, we find it very interesting because for us as builders building DeFi products on a global level, we're having to navigate not just U.S. regulation, at the federal level, but also at the state level. One thing you can do in Wyoming, you're going to get sued in Oregon for. And then you take that into the whole European mess of the European Union and all their stuff with MiCA and DORA, and then VERA down in UAE and all the other jurisdictions around the world. So it becomes a very interesting, place for engineering firms and their clients that are trying to build these applications at a global level on who do you form and who do you work for. You can't just fix everything at one time. It just becomes cost prohibitive. So we need, from a regulatory environment, more harmonization across all the various regulatory entities, which we don't see that happening anytime soon because it's just, Brussels is trying to enforce it on the world. The U.S., God knows what's going to happen tomorrow with Trump and, Genius Act and other things going on. And then, the UAE trying to be the, crypto center of the world, but they have the VERA policies. So we find it very difficult to look at that. And it's really interesting. A lot of our client base, really the discussions are coming in the design phase, building applications that don't need any regulation. They don't have customers. They don't have banking. They don't have any of these things. They're building self-contained applications for themselves to go generate high-frequency trading and arbitrage strategies or what have you, and not have to have customers. They're taking capital that they have, deploying it, making money on it, and not worrying about other things. So, we really see, a lot of confusion for engineering and builders to go in there and work with their customers to build applications. We need to set up sandboxes where we can go test things out and work with the regulating environments to say, hey, will this work in your country or not? And you have to make some tough decisions, who you're going to play in or where you're going to go. The good news is for companies, even though we're a global economy, there's sufficient opportunity within one jurisdiction that they can make a very good living and very good profit for that. Most of my customers are not global banks or not global institutions. They're more the mid-size investors that are building applications within Web3 space, which is a lot of this space. One of our big conversations that we have is how do you bring enterprise into Web3? And, really what we've been doing in Web3 for the last, 8 years, 9 years, really has to change if we're going to bring the enterprise in. Unfortunately, because of the acts of a lot of people within Web3, the regulatory environment has now become, anti-business, so to speak. And we got to figure out how to, better harmonize that and understand clear regulations between the various jurisdictions. Because right now, when we go to build something for a customer, it's like, if you're wanting to be global and you're doing DeFi where you're dealing with customer or institutional or banking, you don't have enough money to go build it, at the size scale that we're playing with. So you're going to only be left to the large institutionals like the Morgan, JP Morgan Chases and the Goldman Sachses and the Standard Charters of the world. And they're not ready to come into this space because of the fraction, the way we're fractioned across these ecosystems and not having a common infrastructure to build upon. So it's a mess right now. And it will continue to be a mess, in our opinion, for quite some time.
I personally agree with you. So I'm
not a lawyer in the room, so I understand all the legal and stuff, but we're just engineers trying to build products for customers.
And when you hit hurdles, you solve them. Well, I think that does lead to Anthony a question about frameworks for transatlantic coordination. What models do you suggest for cooperation, information sharing, consistent application of digital asset regulations, and operational resilience standards?
That's a mouthful. No, absolutely. Kind of taking a look, I believe in kind of stepping back to Bermuda's approach. It's kind of started with the outcome-based regulation and supervisory cooperation in terms of how it travels across the borders and how we've kind of built on our cooperative nature with other jurisdictions that want to be regulated or are looking to better be regulated within the scope of the industry itself. Bermuda, as I stated before, has built a comprehensive framework. for digital assets. We've created DABA, and it's, gives clarity for licensing, oversight, custody, client asset protections, KYC, AML, operational resilience. And so it's really important that we create this bridge network system, and we have synergies across the globe in the scope. In terms of modeling, I guess there's several strategies that can be utilized and implemented. We can look at, supervisory collaborations and MOUs. Bermuda has a few MOUs that we do with different jurisdictions. We have one with Wyoming. We have one with Abu Dhabi. And this allows more formalization through bilateral and multilateral exchange, and to ensure that there is, there is either reciprocity or there is a shared information that we can kind of align these expectations. Another could be mutual recognitions, but instead of using identical rules, we can adopt equivalents and based on comparable outcomes. So I think this could be another interesting model to take this approach. Cross-border sandboxes are also another big one as well, because I think if you do have the availability to have a shared test bed for stable coins, for example, you can actually build a system that's actually functional in terms of creating this alignment, proving resiliency against various scenarios that pop up that we can kind of get ahead of. And then I guess this will lead to something maybe like having some type of crisis management synopsis or rules or a playbook or what have you, and that way that we can kind of build together ways into whether it's through protection, asset freezing, just to ensure that there are limitations for any bad actors and to keep them out of the scope. And so in looking at these kind of ideas for modeling, we can actually build this synergy across the entire world. That way that there's, even with those that have more than one federal agency or more than one regulator, kind of just sharing this allows more adaptability within the industry to keep it well regulated and protected.
Yeah, it's going to be quite the undertaking for everybody.
Every day, right?
Yeah. So circling back to Matt, what strategies should businesses be aware of to be resilient against cyber attacks and operational disruptions?
Sure. And I apologize for the disruption. My daughter is acting out a little bit, so my wife
she's having a good time
has
today.
her hands full. Yes, she's having a good time today. In regards to things that companies should be doing to protect themselves, it's very similar to what we do here with CMMC. It's policies, implementing those policies, and really the weakest link in every company generally turns out to be the employees, right? So making sure that the employees are well trained to spot things that are out of alignment, things that aren't typical day-to-day operations. Good third-party oversight, that's always a good thing that needs to take place. Business continuity, that needs to also be happening. And good collaboration among institutions, especially in the stablecoin markets right now. As we see, there's definitely a lot of fraud that takes place still in the crypto markets. But I think over time that with the proper alignment of institutions, that we can get there where things are all on the same page. And DARA basically is trying to get everybody into one alignment, right? So that we're all basically following one plan and implementing that plan in order to make sure everybody's protected. So there are a lot of things that companies can be doing right now to make sure that they're not leaving their customers at risk. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. I know we've got a lot to cover, so you guys really appreciate your answers and your insights. You cover the wide end of the spectrum, which is from somebody who sometimes gets a little too narrow in what I'm working on. This is really helpful to see the different perspectives and to learn about how the regulations are impacting you day to day, but then also where you see opportunity in the future. So again, thank you so much. Really appreciate this panel.
So now we're about to talk about panel 2, which has a whole nother set of questions. And I know that RJ is going to be leading the questions on that.
Yeah, so here we are transitioning panel 2. Panel 2 focuses on crypto regulation, enforcement, and risk management. So we're going to shift to kind of what financial institutions need to know, law, what's happening in the States, and the enforcement and consumer protection area. So starting with a broad perspective and then bringing ourselves back down in, starting with you, Wesley, from a regulatory enforcement landscape perspective, so broad perspective, what updates on ongoing regulation, regulatory actions and enforcement trends signal for compliance teams at financial institutions?
That's a great question, RJ. You know, I'll use a case study that we just did. We were on the phone with 3 different legal teams in 3 different jurisdictions, one out of Israel, one out of London, and one out of LA. And just getting the lawyers to agree what we need to do was insane. I mean, because they're looking from their lens of US, California regulation, European, and then they were also looking from the Israeli law over there. And, you know, really what it's telling us, the compliance officers that were on the phone with us were like, we're not really willing to put our name and our stamp on what's going on right now because we don't really know who's going to enforce what on us. You know, so there's a lot of compliance, you know, requirements in this Web3 space that we're dealing with. And so when you're going, you know, from the institutional standpoint, you know, it's like, who am I following? You know, where am I going? And there's just not a lot of clarity right now between US, European, and rest of the world on, you know, which law to, you know, follow. And if you're a global institution, you know, you're opening up, if you conform to one jurisdiction, you may not be conforming to another jurisdiction. So you're opening yourself up to lawsuits in that jurisdiction. You know, so we're seeing a lot of just confusion of interpretation of the regulations. Who's going to really enforce the regulations? Who's really doing this for a money grab versus really trying to make, you know, it more consumer friendly? And are we just overdoing it, which is causing less innovation and less people coming into this space to build applications to service the industry?
Absolutely. And I think one of the key things to recognize, of course, when we're working with virtual assets and virtual technology is its multi-jurisdictional nature. And so pulling the thread on that, Anthony, talking about cross-border collaboration, cross-border enforcements, can you share the trends that you're seeing in the expanding international cooperation against crypto-based crimes and what it means for cross-border payments, correspondent banking, and customer onboarding?
Sure. You know, and I think it kind of goes back to the previous point and from the previous panel. We are seeing, you know, better synergy, especially as the regulations are being crafted and developed better. Jurisdictions are creating more MOUs to kind of handle these kind of situations. We're seeing the intelligence being shared more, the ability to trace funds end to end. And even raising the bar for like travel rule, you know, compliance and sanction screening. So, you know, these are some methods as well. We're also seeing faster like cross-border actions, such as the certain jurisdictions having better authority to freeze certain transactions, recover those assets as well, and have that ability to do so across jurisdictions in a much faster way than what we've seen previously. So, you know, this is very interesting to see as we continue to develop and integrate the rules and regulations, and as it gets more holding and more stabilized. So I guess, you know, from Bermuda's vantage point, we look at what we add in terms of the values, and with the regulatory framework that we have established that has embedded deep details for AML and KYC compliance and sanctions controls and other measures to protect clients, including consumer protection disclosures and things of that nature. We look to have the ability to share information as necessary with other jurisdictions, to try to make sure that there is limited risk. I can't speak too much on exactly what the regulators do. I'm not a regulator for the island itself, but I do know that our regulators are very thorough in their operations and how they approach these kind of situations, and we're always open to sharing and providing support to other jurisdictions. And these are the conversations that need to be had, because otherwise we're going to see, a repeat of continued negative actions, and jurisdictions need to be on top of that in order to prevent it.
Yeah, and so I think maybe taking that kind of the concepts in the abstract and maybe applying them specifically, Alexandra, speaking to kind of lessons from the major cases that we've identified, what insights for banks and businesses from recent high-profile crime investigations do you see serving kind of to strengthen the internal policy and risk assessments of those organizations?
I mean, I guess we have to start with, we are in a sort of arms race here where it doesn't matter if the case is high profile or not, we're always trying to learn something. But obviously we've had the case study that Kraken revealed the other day where a North Korean agent was trying to infiltrate the company through their HR channels. So that's just a fun new attack stream that I sincerely hope every Fortune 500 company, CASP service provider, went and spoke to their HRs and asked, so how are you making sure it's a real person? Because I don't think it's necessarily something that they were trained for in their HR courses at university, perhaps. So that's probably an obvious, more recent one. We've seen from the Bybit hack, the Beacon network evolve out of that, which is sort of some cross-industry collaboration between various rivals to share information to try and sort of buoy up the reputation of the industry altogether. So we've seen that we really need to start collaborating more, and it was Anthony mentioned travel rule earlier. Travel rule has been a mess because people weren't talking to each other, and we're getting to the point where we're having to slowly put people in rooms that weren't necessarily sitting and playing with each other nicely before. And then I would say something that's really happening now is this especially with mule farms, this commercialization of fraud as a service. I mean, the other day I got too deep into following some blockchain analysis. It's a Cardin network, and I somehow ended up on this server that was like private, was public somehow, and it was basically an Carder ranting about kids these days not wanting to do fraud properly and wanting everyone to hand it to them on a silver platter and not wanting to put in the effort themselves, and they're so lazy, and he was just giving up on fraud because he was so disappointed in the youth of the fraud. It was a very entertaining few minutes I spent there, but it does highlight this is becoming more and more institutionalized. It's becoming, by 20,000 accounts, there's going to be a farm probably of kidnapped victims in Cambodia who are running a mule farm, generating identities that anyone can buy on Telegram for $20. And frankly, it's just becoming something where we have to share more information and more diagnoses and collaborate, because otherwise we'll get outpaced.
And that's exactly why SROs are important, because it's the cross communication between individuals within our community to help with self-regulation and spotting what is ethical and what's not ethical. RJ, I'll pop back over to you because I know we have a new guest who has arrived, so I'll let you do the intros.
Sure. So taking what would be the SRO function, information sharing and best practice development,
Yeah.
To speak about not only those tools and then also who's responsible either for participating in SRO or for contributing to the dialogue. Larry joining in, if you will, kind of give yourself an intro and then answer the question. So as far as compliance responsibilities go, what essential tools or best practices for identifying, reporting, and mitigating digital asset related crime are you noticing being adopted?
Hey, so my name's Larry Cameron. I'm the founder and chief cyber officer for Paradigm Intelligence. I train mainly law enforcement, around 7,000 agencies in the past 5 years. Majority of those internet crimes against children task forces. Also been a trainer for Interpol on a few operations, spoke at the United Nations, and I was fortunate enough to train the PSYOPs and other military special ops guys over at Fort Bragg. So repeat the question.
Sure. So talking about kind of compliance responsibilities and translating what is an idea into actual practice, what essential tools or best practices for identifying, reporting, mitigating digital asset related crime are you seeing being adopted?
Okay. So majority for the compliance, as you know, the regular ones, you do the KYC, which is know your client, KYB, know your business, anti-money laundering, transaction monitoring, noticing a lot of sanctions, terrorism, or nation state type databases being used, different watch lists. I find this is really good. For instance, Dow Jones has a special interest person database. They're really good for fraud and money laundering and different financial crimes. We've been actually implementing different models within business intelligence, AIs within financial institutions like banks that cover human trafficking related data sets, also child protection, the integration of threat intelligence. So as well for digital assets, you got to know if you're transacting with, it could be ATMs or gambling, casinos, mixers. There's sanctions in those as well. A little high risk exchanges. So you need to know where those funds are coming from. But you also need to do KYT, which is know your transaction. So you need to know where those funds are going to. I see a lot more information sharing. It could be 314B of the Patriot Act, the information sharing, probably a lot more of that. It has similar properties of the Bank Secrecy Act, the DARA, so it requires confidentiality, privacy, but these are the main things. I find knowing thy criminal is probably one of the best methods. There's different scam websites. You can integrate that. You can monitor against various emails. You can check different IP addresses. There's a lot of these data points that you can use in your infrastructure to detect fraud or criminal activity.
Yeah, and so a lot of what Larry mentioned are things that we do kind of as transactions occur, right? As unfortunately crime tends to occur. So after the fact, as it were, right of bang, the military would like to say, is after something has happened. But there's a lot of work that's also being done to try to protect a customer or reputation before things happen. So Matt, looking kind of to what happened, what we're doing before an event. Can you speak to what strategies to enhance consumer protection, establish trust, and protect an institution's reputation in the evolving regulatory environment are occurring?
Sure. So in the fast moving regulatory map out there, the SEC probably is the first. The CFTC, commodities and derivatives for overseas crypto derivatives and spot manipulation cases. Banking regulators, FinCEN, that's another one. CFPB for UDAP wallets and payments, states for licensing and conduct, and Congress more or less for market structure and direction. We need clear direction on regulation and where we need to focus, and everybody needs to get on the same page. Because I mean, from what we're all discussing here, is it sounds like most countries are doing their own game plan, and nobody's on the same page, which makes for regulation and for compliance basically a nightmare for everybody involved. And it's just going to create a lot of bottlenecks at this point, especially for developers. I'm in the process of building a Web3 app right now on the ICP blockchain. And just listening to the discussion tonight, I realized there's a lot more from the compliance standpoint when I'm looking at the EU and DARA that need to be integrated into this Web3 app or shut them out altogether, right? And I'd hate to lose that market share because it's a great Web3 app, but with the amount of compliance that's being asked, you got to budget for all of this stuff. Can that even be afforded, right? So is it something that comes down the line, or do we just write off Europe altogether, which is unfortunate. So yeah, I mean, those are some of the things that people can start getting in place right now. There are definitely enforcement risk signals to build up for your risk register. Misleading insurance, like claims and apps and websites and marketing. Those are hot buttons. So there's just there's a lot of things that can be done, and a lot of agencies that can be utilized in order to make sure that you're meeting compliance or trying to get compliant.
A lot can be done. Unfortunately, no matter what happens before things happen, they do often happen. Murphy does play in crypto along with everybody else, and so sometimes, with despite best efforts to protect, best practices, best tools, things do go wrong. So to close this out, last but not least, Robert, talking about what happens when things don't work out well, particularly responding to distressed crypto entities. What guidance on due diligence, exposure management, and crisis response can a business do with distressed asset operators or exchanges in the event that something does go wrong?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So, we have this saying, at least in Texas we do, it works great, we just got to fix it. So it all works great here, but we got to fix the regulation. So we're doing that, but we also have the standard compliance framework, risk assessment and risk management built together. I think the first thing that anyone in virtual assets needs to understand is, you use what you know from risk management and compliance, but then you got to make it fit your program. You got to look at what you're doing and what your goal is, and make the risk compliance or your risk management program fit it, or your risk assessment, because you don't want to be just taking an old policy and stick it in there. And you see a lot of people doing this, like, oh, I need some risk policies. They get on the internet, ChatGPT spits them out, but that doesn't serve their purpose. They gotta fix it. It's gotta be done in accordance with what they're doing. So that's one thing they got to do, and then risk management afterwards. So once you're in a position to where you're a distressed digital asset provider, as the question said, you got to already have things in place. You already got to know what you're going to do and what your management is going to be. It's no time at that point to be making up policy as you go. You should already have this in place. You should be rehearsed. It should be trained. And I think the next thing is, in the digital asset space, be forthcoming with your customers. They probably know already that you've had an incident maybe even before you knew you had an incident. We're doing blockchain analytics all day, every day. It's very open. You can see what's going on. Companies like ours, companies like Arkham, companies like Chain, TRM, we're always looking. We always know what's happening on blockchain. And we can probably call you out before you even know what happened in some cases. So be upfront, have your policies ready to go. Don't be making them up on the fly. If you're distressed, you're distressed. And then, of course, I think Coinbase did a really nice example when they had this last hack of some customer data. When the CEO came out, Mr. Armstrong, and said, "Look, not only are we not going to pay you to get our data back, but we're going to pay $20 million ransom for someone to tell us who you are." That's leadership right there. That's what we need. We don't need, secrecy. We need leadership from the front. And that comes from not only the asset provider itself, but also by regulators and by law enforcement. We need proper assessments, proper management when it happens, and then leadership.
Absolutely. Well, certainly thanks to everyone for participating in both panel 2 and panel 1. I hope it's been as informative for everybody who's listening or watching and recording as it was for me. I think that concludes panel 2's time. So Jackie, Matt, I'll turn it back over to you to close us out.
Yeah, you know what? I'm very impressed. One, we did it in 1 hour, and I kept thinking with all the questions that we had shared with everyone, that the conversations, which could have extended way longer than just 1 hour, but we gave a good overview for everyone who needs to know what's happening in this space. And really, these are bite-sized nuggets of information. We definitely can extend all these conversations. And when you hop onto the DARA website, or you'll hop onto the Blockchain Legal Institute website, or even the Maryland Blockchain Association, check out the longer videos and conversations that we're having, with each of the individuals who are here, because we do more in-depth 30-minute conversations, for everyone who's here. And that way you guys who's listening can definitely learn. But thank you everyone who's been on today. I know that you are traveling from around the world, different time zones. And so we're very grateful that you have taken the time to be here. Matt, any last minute thoughts before we sign off?
A big thanks to our panel moderators, Allison and RJ. Really appreciate that. Great job. And, great being here with you colleagues. It's interesting to see the world changing so fast in front of us. It just occurred to me that, stable coins, what an interesting term, and how important they're going to be to these countries politically. How a stable coin is probably going to replace the importance of a digital dollar or a printed dollar, and that's going to happen, or already has happened. So, so much going on in the international world that touches blockchain. Pretty inspiring. I think, I'd love to hear, we can all generate questions for next time when we bring together great people like these. Things that come to my mind are, and we didn't have time for these, but, is there a rise in enforcement actions? Is there a drop in, crime in certain jurisdictions? What are the trends? All things we'll have to cover next time. So, Jackie, thank you for putting together such a great event, and thanks to everyone for being here. Definitely thanks to our foundation and those people who help support the foundation that makes this possible. And having said that, I know it's probably a little later on the East Coast. Thank everyone around the world. Appreciate you all. And Jackie, why don't you go ahead and close us out?
All right, everyone. So if you would like to become part of the DARA, Digital Asset Regulatory Authority, and be part of the speaking group, or be part of the Attorney General Working Group, or the Compliance Officers Group, or the other projects that we're doing, definitely reach out. We want to know who you are, because you're all part of our community, and we're here to support you. So we appreciate each one of you. Thank you, and have a great night. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.